You're listening to DruidCast Episode 170. Hello my friends and welcome to DruidCast episode 170. I am your host Dave the Bard, and DruidCast is brought to you on or around the 20th of every month by the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. If you want to find out more about membership to the Order and our courses, you can do that on our website at www.druidry.org. Opening the show, you heard Night, a song from the new album called Dunsany Dreaming from the Swedish band Mary Read. The new album features poems by the author Lord Dunsany, which the band have set to music and weaved together with Nordic traditional music and atmospheric soundscapes. Dunsany was an early writer of what would later evolve into fantasy as a literary genre, and was a huge influence on writers like H.P. Lovecraft, J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. In his poetry, he wrote of fairy folk and magic, but also about the horrors of the First World War. It's a fabulously dark album, so if you are a fan of Nordic folk music, do check it out. On the 19th of June, the Order will be streaming a day of talks, music and ritual on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. Now, we would normally be heading to Glastonbury for our summer gathering, but things were a little too uncertain to go ahead with that this year. So what to do? Well, everyone will be able to tune in to this very special day. Our speakers are John Matthews, Penny Billington and Professor Ronald Hutton. There will be an online solstice ritual in the afternoon, and in the evening there will be a couple of hours of live entertainment from some of the Order's bards, including Poplar Jake, Barry Patterson, Arthur ZZ Birmingham, Spiral Dance from Australia, myself and Liv Talk, who is this month's podcast guest. The event begins around 10 a.m, but keep an eye out for updates on the Order's Facebook page as things become a little clearer and the event becomes a little closer. This event will be streamed live and absolutely free, so mark your diaries for the OBOD online summer gathering on Saturday the 19th of June from the OBOD's Facebook page and YouTube channel. Now, this month's guest is the poet Liv Talk, and we were due to meet at the Uffington White Horse for a Walking the Talk interview, but sadly the weather here in the UK has been wet and windy. We rescheduled it twice, but then the DruidCast deadline arrived and we had to take our chat online. But hey, we are magicians, is that not the truth? So we begin with a little virtual visit to the White Horse. Liv is an outstanding talent, and it was so good to see her again after so long to have this chat about her poetry, the Awen inspiration, and she also performs some of her work live as well. So grab that cuppa and let's head off to the virtual White Horse of Uffington. The Talkie Bit. So here I am with the amazing poet Liv Talk, our old friend now as well. We go back a while. The weather has scuppered us twice. Yeah. We were due to go to the Uffington White Horse for a Walking the Talk session, which would have been lovely. But last week it was raining. This week it's hugely windy. It would just been a great cacophony of microphone.
What fair weather druids we are.
I know, but so instead of literally walking the talk at the Uffington White Horse, let's just pretend, because we can do that. Let's go there and pretend.
I've got this amazing imagination. I can pretend.
Brilliant. All right. So I've drawn up at the car park at the Uffington White Horse. It's a nice one, just along from the Wayland Smithy there on the Ridgeway. It's a nice little car park. There might be an ice cream van there today, to be honest. And so I'll meet you there, and we've begun walking up to that amazing horse and Dragon Hill. Why have you brought us to the Uffington White Horse and Dragon Hill?
I think I had brought you here other than it's just such a wonderful place to be in May. I mean, for a start, because it's just so green and magical, but because this is where we used to come and do Beltane camps when when Druid camps used to happen, OBOD camps used to happen there, and also where I got hand-fasted in the field below the White Horse, and it's a really special place to me. And it is where probably about 12 or 13 years ago I went to the Eye of the White Horse in the middle of the night with some, rogue Druid characters with a cloak on and a staff, and sort of raised my arms up and said that this is what I want to be, this is my poet name, and this is the things I want to do in the world, and made that big intention about myself as an artist and my dreams.
And that was on the Eye of the White Horse itself.
It was, and it was the same camp where I got my poet name, Liv Talk, as well. So it feels, it's a really powerful place for me.
Yeah. And what year was that? When was that? Go on.
It was. I'm not entirely sure as the years blend into one another. It was 10 years ago that I got hand-fasted there, so I imagine it was probably sort of 12 or 13 years ago. Yeah. It was. I was probably about 28 or something.
That's interesting. So how did the name?
I think because within Druidry, people often change their name, which is one of the things I really like, to feel like you could, take empowerment of your own name and be influenced by that around you. And I decided I needed a name as a performer, because often, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm a slight oversharer. And,
once or twice.
And actually, sort of naturally, I wasn't necessarily that confident, and to have a persona felt really, really helpful, to be able to step behind a character, so I'm sort of almost able to play a role, and that helped me sort of share my work a lot more. So I decided I needed a name. So I think there was some meditation practice going on that week, which was all about finding your sort of name. So I took part in one of those, and I remember doing a meditation, and I was sort of choosing between two paths in the meditation, and one of them was down some kind of rocky, craggy, horrible sort of place, and one of them was up the beautiful, lovely hill full of flowers. And I remember thinking, actually, I think I might choose the nice path for once. Why don't I just live? I'll live. And I was like, oh, Liv, that's a great name. I'm going to go with that. That's a really good name. But I came out thinking, well, that's not enough. I'm not Madonna. I need a second part to my name. So later in the week, after I think I'd made that intention in the White Horse, I picked an animal oracle card with the intention of finding my second name, and I got the wild boar, which was Talk. And I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. What a ridiculous coincidence that is, because live your talk, live talk. I thought that's slightly too sort of, but I said, well, it's kind of magical. It felt very magical. And it also was like, if I believe in this stuff, then the universe has clearly given me something, even if I think that's quite an obvious thing I wouldn't have necessarily chosen myself, but it really did sort of fit. So I thought I've got to go with it. If I believe it, I have to go with it. So I went with it.
And so were you already writing poetry at that point?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I was. I did a sort of writing degree at Dartington College of Arts, sort of, back when I was sort of 18, in performance writing. And Dartington was just this amazing place in sort of South Hams in Devon, really magical, with a long history of creativity and really wacky and out of the, off the chart, sort of odd. And I had such an amazing time there at university. And I really felt like I was totally in my element. I'd found my tribe. It was just the best time in my life. And when I left, I was the sort of brutal reality of the world was incredibly difficult for me, sort of. And I was very depressed for quite a long time. And I obviously couldn't get work as an artist. I had to get work in telecommunications and, all the other kind of things that you have to do, and was away from my tribe, was away from artists. And I just was wretchedly miserable, and went through a really important time, I think, with that. And it wasn't until I think I found Druidry again, sort of when I was 26, that I sort of found my tribe again, sort of the people I was able to be beautifully bonkers with, and where I could start being creative again. And I hadn't really been that creative since leaving. I had worked as a sort of a journalist in publishing for quite a while. So I had been writing for a living in a kind of more perfunctory way, which was a very useful skill to learn how to do that. But it wasn't until I rediscovered my sort of creativity through Druidry and I tested out some poems around the fire at a Druid camp one Lunacy. And everyone was like, "Oh," I don't know what they really felt, but they were so supportive, and everyone was so unbelievably enthusiastic about what I was doing that it just gave me that boost to get into it again.
Yeah, and it felt like, I mean, I've watched you, you know, over the years and seen you change and grow and in that sort of side of your creativity. And it felt like there was a moment, and I don't know if that moment was a few months or a year or whatever, but because I see you rarely, there was a moment where you just thought, you seemed to think, do you know what, I can do this. I can take this up a notch and I can really do this. Can you remember that kind of particular, was there a moment where you just thought, actually?
Possibly. I mean, it's been a sequence of moments. Like it's been a slow ascent for over many years, and it seems to go up a notch sort of fairly regularly. The more you put out, the more you get back. So it's like a snowball. It sort of speeds up now because I have obviously built a big audience over the years. So and so when I do projects, I get more response. And was there a moment? Yeah, I mean, probably. I started working with a poet in Totnes called Matt Harvey, probably in my late 20s, and getting involved in a show that he ran called The Wondermentalist Cabaret, which was on Radio 4. And I just fell in love with spoken word through that. And working with somebody who was doing it professionally. And he was a great mentor to me, and still is. And I think that just made me realise how much joy this art form could bring when it is done at a higher level. So that was a big fundamental thing for me. But yes, the Druidry definitely was. I don't think I would have done it without the Druidry either. I think that was a huge influence to me at the beginning, just giving me the confidence.
And what was your route into Druidry then? Let's go back to that point. You know, how did you find this?
It was my mum, actually. It was my mum had started going to camps with a partner at the time, and she had invited me to come along and said, "Oh, you'll really like this." And I was really scared, and I hid in my tent for the first 2 days reading Harry Potter, and weirdly, and then I went to one of the lectures, a historic lecture. It wasn't by Ronald, but it was by another historian that is attached to OBOD, who I can't remember the name of now. And
Graham
I remember
Harvey,
thinking,
by any chance, maybe
it might have been Graham Harvey, but I remember thinking, oh, they're not all woo-woo bonkers. Actually, it's not all conspiracy theories and David Icke. It is actually like really intelligent and interesting, and these people have a lot to say that I really, that I'm really interested in, and I think. Then I started to feel a bit safer and was able to sort of, get into it and engage with it but it was the camps. It was through the camps that I really got into it.
What was your first memory of stepping onto a stage as a performance poet? You know, actually, you know, not a campfire, but a stage. Do you have a memory?
Oh no, I don't because there's been a few. There's been a lot now. I mean, there's different kinds of stages, isn't there? So there's like, you know, tacky pub floors or orange crates, or can you just stand on this table in the school refectory and perform to the students? And then there's been like, you know, the Roundhouse and the Cheltenham Literary Festival and the House of Parliament, and then, you know, bigger festivals and things like that in Glastonbury. So I can't remember an exact moment because I was also doing sort of things at university, but definitely the camps at OBOD, and then wherever there's an audience, it doesn't really matter what the stage looks like. I mean, for poetry, it's kind of getting an audience is a harder thing. So if there's an audience, in my opinion, there's a stage. But I can't remember an exact moment, but I mean, I always do the gatherings as well, and I love doing the OBOD gatherings because I consider that is a good poetry audience. That's like 150 people at a really nice stage. You know, I really like doing those, and everyone the best audience.
Just a bit
I mean,
supportive.
probably the mead. I mean, that probably doesn't have, but I mean,
doesn't do any harm. That's a fact.
but just Druids, everybody's love creativity, and they love supporting creativity, and they really, really appreciate it and engage with it, and that's just wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's been. I mean, I've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gigs now, so it's quite hard to say.
Yeah.
The moment. Because it's been quite a long journey, but there have been moments. Being on Radio 4 has been a moment. There's been moments.
Yeah. And what is the poets to you? What does poetry do to you? Is it an expression? Does it help you just get things out? Is it a therapeutic thing? Is it a memory thing of putting? What does it do for you as a person?
It just makes my life better. I mean, it just makes my life incredible. Even if I wasn't doing anything with them, it helps me channel and process the stuff that happens to me in a much more productive and healthy way. It helps me laugh at myself, or it helps me understand emotionally what myself and other people might be going on. And it also helps me give service. It just gives me a richer, fuller, more interesting life. Yeah.
So, can you give us a poem?
Oh, I can actually. I was just I can give you a poem. I'm just going to give you start with a smaller one. This is a really recent poem, so it's one you wouldn't have heard if you've been at the Obil gatherings. I know, wow. But it's just about when we came out of lockdown, and I started taking my kids to school again. I've got a 5 and a 7-year-old, and they had been at home for a long time over the last year. And every morning, my son, who's 5, I have to wait with him for 15 minutes before he's allowed to go in after his sister goes in. And he plays tag with all the little boys outside the front. And I just find this really, really moving after everything, that the kids have been through. And it's about that. And it's called You're It. Heart pounder, coat swinger, shoe scuffer, giggle box, you are hiding behind the school hut, laughing so hard the netball hoop you're leaning on is shaking the fence. There is a game afoot. A knee twitches, a body twists, the air lingers as your arms fly. Andrew runs at you through a warren of posts and bins, chases you out into the open like a rabbit. He lunges, swinging on your green book bag. The Velcro tears like a yawn. Books scatter. You stumble, fall backwards into Noah, a volcano of joy erupting on the hopscotch. The parents shuffle, grunt, unsure. They wear their masks like bags that have flown into their faces. I steal tears away into my coat sleeves. It's 5 a.m. and I don't want to embarrass the cues, but in truth, there is nothing more beautiful in this whole world. No sunset, no siren, no sweeping ocean vista, no sweaty field of stars dancing than my 5-year-old son, hot cheeks, short breath, playing tag with his friends after 12 months of lockdown. Because that is what this last year took. That moment when you race at someone with your mouth open, spit flying, face lifted, eyes laughing, heart pumping, fingers splayed, reaching across infinity through 2 meters of solid fear to grab fat fistfuls of puffy coat and meet skin to skin with a blissful second of connection before turning and launching on rocket shoes to hide behind the scooter park. COVID used tag, it used touch, it used laughter, it used love, and it turned it against us. Left my son crying under the kitchen table, clutching his toy triceratops, alone and it for months on end. Pass it on, don't pass it on, pass it on, don't pass it on. Childhood crusher, hand scrubber, joy snuffer, face coffin. You're it, you're it, you're it. No, you're it.
Oh. You really, really get into your words, don't you, when you perform as well? You transform, absolutely. If people could have just seen what happened on the screen here as I'm talking to you.
I realised I was doing all the actions.
Exactly, from this person just sitting there having a nice quiet chat to suddenly Live Talk arrives. And it's like, boom. And you speak such truth with your poetry. That's what I love about it. It's like I totally get every word. I remember one poem that you wrote about your your child, I'm sure it was, and that just got the whole audience in tears. In fact, I don't think you could make it through without crying at that point. It was one of those poems. You know the one?
The Human Emergency, that might have been that one.
Yes.
Yeah. That was the turning point poem for me, actually, if thinking about the turning point, because I wrote that poem when there was obviously we've been worried about climate change for a long, long time, but a couple of years ago, it was very much on the news, and there was very much, we've got 12 years left. It was all very hard to just be in your normal life with this constant fear and anxiety. And it was very much about that, and taking my kid to bed every night. But again, looking at my phone, and I was comforting her, thinking, God, is she going to have much longer left? And I wrote a poem called The Human Emergency about that. And it was about spirituality and my dad and loads of big themes, but it just flew around the world. It hit a wave. Somebody filmed it for me in the Bluebell Woods, and I put it out on Facebook and YouTube, and it's been seen by 80,000 people. It's just like, and for me, that was a lot of people for poetry. And sort of people from Philadelphia put in a concert, and it was used in protests in Australia, and it was aired at Oxford University, and it just really hit something, and loads of people sort of gave me work as a consequence of that. And I think it's because sometimes when I hit it right, I have the ability to communicate subjects in a way that moves people to action. And that is what sort of is quite employable as well, and quite but that was the poem that changed it for me. And it ran parallel with me running a project, my first ever funded project, called the Hit Gap Poetry School, which was all about training other poets in my southwest, where I live, southwest of England, to make a living out of what they do, to professionalize their art form. But I ran it at Wellways, where Elaine and Garth have this beautiful place, and it was magical. We did a magic journey in the woods where people had to go and meet dead poets, and it was an incredible thing. So I was trying to support the industry, which I always try and do, because I think if you're an artist, you need to support the industry and the infrastructure to which you are belong to, but also at the same time I had this really big success with this poem, and those two things just took me to the next level in the 2 years ago. So, and by the next level, I mean now, I can, this is my living. So
which is fantastic. And I think one of the things that does that for people is some poets I find wrap their language up very, very prettily. They make things acceptable. From the moment I heard your poems, you do not ever shy away from the controversial at all, ever. You don't seem to censor your language for the audience so that they're not offended or challenged is probably the best way of putting it. Challenged,
I must be honest and say I do more these days.
Oh, really?
Okay. I think as I've got older, I think it depends on who your audience are, and if I want it to make it onto the mainstream media, I tend to a little bit more. Not always. It's great doing gigs because you can absolutely do what you want to do usually. But I'm nearly 40. I'm 42 next week, and I don't have so many one night stands or any one night stands. My life isn't quite so juicy in that way, but no, I try and be as honest as I can, and there's been so many moments when I thought, should I? Oh no, I shouldn't. I really shouldn't. And then I've always done it. That's always been my philosophy. It hasn't steered me wrong.
It's a similar energy to like the Frank Turners of this world, or even the Adeles, where I remember having a conversation with you backstage many, many years ago now, when you were talking about relationships with me and how it was difficult. And I remember saying to you something along the lines of, well, men are probably terrified they're going to end up in one of your poems.
Oh, you did say that to me, didn't you? Yeah. I do remember that. It's divided. Some people, I guess, really want to, and some people, I mean, so they, obviously I've been married for 10 years now, so it's not really such a risk for the male population. But And my family are terrified, I'm sure.
Yeah. And that's interesting because you look at people like Adele and her poems, her songs are obviously inspired by relationships, and there, 2 or 3 breakups have created entire albums. And then you've got Frank Turner, who I don't know if you're familiar with Frank Turner. He's a singer-songwriter, kind of a punk folk, but brilliant artist. And he recently has now got a relationship where he's married and everything, and he's openly said, I'm finding it harder now to get the inspiration for my songs because they've always come from this visceral, emotional thing of relationship for him. But you have been married for 10 years, and your poems, if anything, I think they may have veered off into different directions, but they're coming much more from the point of view of a mother, of a parent, of viewing the world through those aspects of your life, and they've still kept that beautiful, honest energy. I
think I've just allowed my art to grow up with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I am not the same person I was 12 years ago. I don't have the same life, and I don't probably have the same audience. So I wrote a lot about motherhood and pregnancy and new motherhood. I write, as my children get older, I write about that more, and I write a lot about climate change, feminism, different things that happen. I was very ill last year. I wrote a lot about that experience, and it's just, I write about the experiences that happen to me in my life, wherever I am in my life, and from a place of honesty and I hope to carry on doing that. So I'll be writing about menopause and varicose veins and dementia or whatever, and hopefully there'll always be some audience for that. So
isn't that interesting? If you constantly release books, I've always said there's no instruction manual for being a human being, but maybe your poems, if you read them in audio, would be quite an instruction manual of what you might have to expect.
Well, from my from the experiences that I have, that's all I can cover, isn't it? But that's the point. I'll just cover it as I go through the human condition. It's about the human condition when I write about. I'll report on back from where I am at that point in my life. I'm not in my 20s anymore having crazy sort of things, relationship stuff where I can report back on, but I am a working mother of 2 young children, doing with a long-term health condition, other stuff, but it's all it's all food for the fire. So and
it speaks to a lot of people. It definitely speaks to a lot of people. What's your creative process? What's the point of inspiration? Where do you get your inspiration from? And then how does that end up on a paper or a banana? We'll talk about later.
Oh yeah, the bananas. It sort of depends. I mean, I do quite a lot of commissions these days, so I have to write to order as well as I always think a poem is a bit like being a sculpture sometimes. So I'll have an idea and maybe a metaphoric way of expressing that idea, and then I will sort of try and write that out, and then I'll kind of rewrite it and sculpt it and move things around and shift it and try and get different levels and try and make it better and better. Or it'll take 3 weeks, or it'll come out in, like that poem you just heard, You're It. I wrote it in a workshop almost completely. It just came out, boom. Whereas I'm trying to write one at the moment about what inspiration is, which I've been battling with for a long time, for a week. So it just, I guess my process, sometimes I have to make myself do it, and sometimes it just arrives. But if I can't do it, I just sort of put it down and then go out and have an experience or an adventure, or go into nature, or go for a walk, or turn the music up and have a dance, or just find a way of letting that come into me. And also, do you know those like air tubes that you used to like put messages in and send up? I mean, I've never done it, but they used to do it in like the post office or the stock exchange or something like that.
Yes.
I sort of think it's kind of a bit like that. I go, universe, I need an idea. I've got to do this thing. I've got this deadline. So I put my request for an idea in one of those metaphors, scale up, send it into the universe, and then I give it like 5 minutes, and then I have to go out into the world, and I assume that the answer will be delivered to me in some unusual way. And that's kind of, and if I look for it, I'll find an answer. So that's kind of I have a good relationship with my inspiration,
with your muse,
with with the channel. It's quite incredible, that whole place out there where ideas live. And when I read my stuff, I think, did I write that? I have no idea how I write that. But I just feel that I've got a good channel to that place. I don't feel that I'm necessarily any more skilled than anyone else. I'm just well connected.
Open to it. Yeah, Keith Richards says that songwriting is like that. He says it's like fishing, and sometimes you catch a nice big one, and other times you just sit there and just don't catch anything for days, and other times you just literally put the rod in the water, and you've caught something, and you just even wonder where it's come from. And also Stephen King, I remember something he said, if you sit around and wait for the muse, there's every chance that it won't happen. And I think that's what people experience as writer's block, where they're just waiting for inspiration to come. And he says, so what he does is when he feels that emptiness where there's nothing there, he just says to his muse, I'm going to be at my typewriter tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. and I'm going to just write rubbish until you turn up. So he makes an appointment with his muse. And that free, I've found that myself, that free writing, just not taking your pen off the paper, just writing on a topic, and suddenly you'll write a line and go, that's the angle, and it can happen. So, actually directing the Awen is a good thing. And why not? Let's bring us on to the Awen, because you are a bard. You are an honorary bard of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. So what is the Awen to Live Talk?
Well, coincidentally enough, I'm making a show at the moment, and one of the things in the show is that I have to write a poem about inspiration. So this is the poem I've been trying to write recently, and it basically is what the Awen is. So I will. It's kind of a bit, it's not quite, the sculptor doesn't have its full definition yet. So I'm sculpting this poem, but I think this is the best way of explaining to you. I may not read it with such skill or confidence as the last one, because this is a world premiere. And I haven't written the last line yet. Okay, so the last verse isn't quite right, so that will change. But it's called "Don't Be a Twit, Be a Joyful Conduit."
Nice.
It amuses me anyway. Okay. I hear you need a little something in your life. Something next level. The white light from Leonard Cohen's Bum Crack, cut with apple blossom and Beyonce's Thigh Glitter, served on a fire poi, that kind of shiz. Well, I think I have just the thing. 10 pins are forked forever, plugged into everything. Let's rendezvous where the road and rainbow meet. Pay me with your hands, your limbs, your feet, and an intensity of focus akin to hocus pocus. But do not confuse me with some tin pot muse. I am your element, the fool in flight, a burning fuse. I go by many names, but only a few get Arts Council funding. I am the beauty you decide, not eyes or skin or shape, but what your hands and mind create. Look for me by looking up. I'll be the one burning like a petrol fire in a coffee cup. I speak the truth, I talk too much. I've got a tongue that weaves the ebb and flow of spirits at a puppet show. I'll quirk a brow, snap a brace, smile like Disney drew my face. And you'll just know, like a desk light knows a frantic moth. Van Morrison knows the mystic. The madness of colour personified knows Van Gogh. A side of beef knows Lady Gaga's vital statistics. And you need to trust me, because I come from the place where Ziggy Stardust was made and larks ascend, where the show must go on, and it must. Take that on trust. I am the magic hour, the tower of song, a flower like a tiny fist punching through the gravel, a dancer with a snake of hips, Cary Grant emerging from the mist, a thought that burns, a die that's cast, a busker singing through his mask, the future phoenix of your past, an answer to the thing you asked. The more you breathe me in, the deeper I'll go. The more you make out of my madness, the more sweet sanity you'll know. And something else that starts with a P rhymes with contrition, transition, magician, take it, be a mark maker, a disturber of the clean surface, a garden of hope. False teeth kissed by glossed vermilion, the 99th red balloon, a haiku in a million. You don't have to be a genius. You just have to have a go, be a part of the art around you, ride the frenzy into the universal flow. That's what I think Arwen is.
Wow. And that's not got a last line, because that seemed to end beautifully to me.
Well, yeah, I was kind of doing it whilst having my coffee this morning. Yeah. Whilst trying to make my computer work. Yeah.
Wow.
So,
yeah. Okay. So everybody, that's the Awen. So we can stop looking now. We've found it.
Well, whatever that means.
Amazing. Thank you.
But I really do want to say this, and I think this is something that I really, really believe, that sometimes we get really attached to the fact that some people have the Arwen and some people don't, or some people have access to it, or some people have the genius and some people don't. And I don't really believe that, or I don't believe that's a good way of looking at it, because I think that every single person has and can access this to greater degrees of, professional success. But I think it's everyone's right, and it makes everyone's life better. And be that gardening or cooking or needlecraft or painting or singing or whatever you want to do, just do it and love it and enjoy it and believe that you deserve it and you have total permission. Only a few crazy ones of us, find a way of, you just manifest and keep on working to make that maybe a living. But that shouldn't ever put anyone off. This is everyone's. Yeah,
the drive behind the Awen is not financial. It's not about earning a living from it. It's about expressing, isn't it?
Yeah,
and that expression and that creativity is absolutely within everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, it's not about making a living, but I absolutely believe that the arts should be valued in such a way where people are paid for what they do. And I think, and their time and their skill and their hard work. And I think, it's a balance, isn't it? It's like everyone should have access to being creative and not feel permission and not worry about whether it's good or bad and just enjoy that. But I genuinely think that, we also have to value in society our artists and make sure they are paid, because if people do stuff for free all the time and people then it never enables there to be this to be a professional industry, which should be.
I think I was more thinking of as a level of success, a kind of benchmark as a level of success rather than an aim, So it's like, I'll to think I'll never be that person on that stage earning a living out of it, so I won't bother.
Yeah, so I won't bother. No, that's ridiculous.
That's kind of where I was coming from. As a musician myself, I couldn't agree with you.
I have to keep saying that just to the world in general. But by the way,
and that brings us actually around to the past year and a bit, to be honest, because like myself, I had a very full calendar as from kind of February 2020, and then overnight everything disappeared and just hasn't come back. I've been very, very, very blessed to be able to do these online house concerts monthly, and just through my Facebook page, and I've gone back to busking. Essentially, I'm kind of saying, here I am. I'll be here for an hour. I'll come into your house. Let's have fun, And people have been very, very beautifully generous and have managed to keep the wolf from my door. You must have had the same experience of seeing your live performances.
Yeah, my husband's a musician and was a music teacher, so just like the bottom fell out of our ability to earn a living initially. I mean, I was still working part-time for an arts charity as the marketing manager at that point, so I was still earning, I still had that job, and Rich still had some furlough. But yeah, it was huge, and it was just really awful to see it to the whole industry. I think musicians were very much affected because music is something very hard to move online, and harder in some ways than spoken word, and theatre was completely decimated as well. It's been really. It's a bit slightly tricky place for me because I've actually done really well creatively out of this period as well, and I think it's really sad to see what happened to the industry. Really sad, but some amazing things have happened as a result of that, and the industry won't be the same, but that's not always a bad thing. I can't speak for music because I don't exactly know what's happening, and I think it's harder for music, but creative people are incredible. Their ability to just get out there and say, okay, we're just going to shake this up and change this. Our audience is still there. we're going to find a new way to find them and reach them. What do people need right now from art? How can we give that to them? That's the question I always ask. It's like, it's not that people didn't need us, for their mental health and their well-being, and they needed us more than ever. So it was just a case of finding new ways to support people creatively. And I teach a lot of workshops and work a lot with adults with mental health and learning challenges. And the organisation I work for, we just moved it all online. So I was teaching 2 or 3 workshops a week throughout most of the lockdowns online. And I run a night called the Rainbow Fish Speakeasy, which is on tonight, guys. If you've got my Facebook, you can find it, where that's kind of an open mic night. We always have a headliner, and that comes out of a wellbeing project as well. And that was really successful online. And so was able to move a lot of my stuff online. So in that sense, so just sort of scraped sort of through myself. But yeah, it's
moving it online. I think I was lucky, being a solo acoustic performer. It was a bit more like a poet or something like that. And I realized that the online shows could never replace the being there and hearing voices sing along and standing up with arms around each other, singing Wild Mountain Time and all those things that you do live. It could never replace that. But I did a little house concert tour many years ago where I just said to people, if you can get 15 people around your house, I'll come around and play a gig in your house. And I just thought that would work, a really informal, not trying to replicate a live show, but just turn on your telly, I'm there in your front room, let's have a chat kind of thing. Yeah. And that's what's, I think's really worked. And I've realized that my place, and people, I guess, like myself and like you, the really important jobs became very much to the fore for me, the key workers in the NHS and things like that. And it started to make me realize that that my role and the role of I don't mind using the word entertainer. I don't mind using that at all as what I do. I entertain people, and I think that's a valuable role. So I'm there when that key worker comes home from work and just wants to forget about all of the stuff that is going on in their lives, and they just want to just absorb music and song and go somewhere else. That's what we do. And I think that is, it's a valuable role in a very different way, but we are there for those people in a way, and that
we are so important.
That leads me on to something that I notice I think you were definitely the driving force behind this, if not the force behind it. And that was your Haiflu videos and poems. Yeah. Come on, tell us a little about that, because
so what I did when lockdown started in March 2020 is I felt unable to be creative, because part of the role of a poet is to be able to sort of process what's happening and tell the story, of what's happening. But I was in shock. Everyone was in shock. A lot of writer friends of mine were saying, how do we possibly write? I try and write and I just sort of, it falls apart because I don't know what's going on, and it was a very difficult time to write about at that moment. So I sort of I didn't even strike on the idea. I asked people to tell me how they were feeling just in my Facebook thread in a haiku. Because that would contain what they were feeling, and just sort of, it was a nice construct. And I really, I'm a teacher of writing, creative writing for well-being, and I just knew that would sort of just help people get their thoughts together in a concise way.
So for people listening who might know what a haiku is, can you explain what a haiku is?
Yeah, it is a short poem of 5 syllables. First line 5 syllables, second line 7, and third line 5. And I was just it's a Japanese poem. It's often juxtaposed with images of nature within the poem. But I was just asking people to use that kind of syllable form, a short syllable form, for no other reason than it would keep a thought contained, and to just tell me how they were doing. And it was just like a sharing circle almost, but with a haiku, and it's using those different influences. And I didn't do it for an artistic purpose necessarily. I just did it because I wanted to do something to help, little something. And so a lot of people started doing it. And then I kind of had like 50, 60, 70 on my Facebook thread. And as I read them, I thought, oh, this is the story. When you read all these little glimpses together, this tells the story, emotional story of what's happening. We can't tell it as one person, but together, and for me, that story was so exciting and real. So I have in the past made films where I use photographs and words over the photographs, and I'm a designer as well. So I asked people to send me their photographs because it's quite hard to get copyright-free images. And I wanted photographs from their windows and their worlds and the streets, and just like the world was getting weird, it was getting empty. There was weird signs going up. Things looked odd. There was rainbows in windows. There was deserted, motorways. So people started sending me photographs, and I didn't think I'd get very many, but the photographers got on board as much as the writers, and I got hundreds again. So I decided to match, photographs and words together and create a series of stills. And then I asked my husband, who's a musician, could you just compose me like a 3.5 minute piece of music, that kind of fits this theme? I'll give you some money. Yeah. and he did, and he composed a lovely piece of music in, musicians will understand this, but in 5/7/5 time signature as well. And nice. Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I wouldn't know that, but he did. And so I made this little short 3.5 minute film of about 25 slides. It's just these snapshots, visual snapshots, poetic snapshots of the world that week. And it was just lovely. I mean, it just really hit the right note. And I shared it online, and people really loved it and had thousands of views. And National Poetry Day were on it. They were like, oh, we love this. This is brilliant. And it became the word of the week in the Times and stuff like that. And so I just thought, I better do it again then. So I did it the next week. And what happened? And then I just sort of had committed myself to doing this sort of every week during lockdown. And it wasn't a small commitment. I mean, it was a really big commitment. I won't lie to you. So I'd ask people to send me stuff on like a Tuesday, and and I'd get hundreds. I mean, there was a point when I was getting like 500 haiku a week. And so, and people were chatting about each other's online. And so the creativity was happening before, outside of the film. There was a whole community of people sort of sharing and talking through the haikus. Oh, I love this. This really resonates with me. And then the photographs would come in. And then I'd spend sort of almost like 3 solid days sort of making the photographs of the slides and making the film, and then sharing the film every week. And each week was kind of a chapter in this story as it was unfolding. And it helped me massively deal with it because it showed a journey, and it but it told a social history, and National Poetry Day loved it, and they got the British Library involved, and I did a seminar for like 150 librarians online, and then lots of librarians did sort of spin-off projects where they and I've just been sent this beautiful, nobody at home can see this beautiful sort of book called The World Upside Down, which is sort of illustrations of people's haikus from one of the libraries. And schools got involved, and there were school competitions, and it just, I got, COP came quite big. And then by sort of week 12, I think I was just like, I was literally at death's door. I was really poorly. I was getting iller and iller during this process as well. And National Poetry Day, who have good contacts, got me on the Today programme on Radio 4. And it was one of the only poetry features ever to go on the Today programme, because it was short, because there was funny ones, because it was accessible, because the general public would enjoy it and relate to it, and it wasn't just a kind of higher brow poet talking in a way that people didn't understand. As Adrian Mitchell says, most people ignore poetry because most poetry ignores most people. So Radio 4 Today programme loved it, and it went on Radio 4. And I had different people involved in it voicing some of the haiku as well on that. And there were about 500 different people got in one of the films in the end. And I had over 10,000 haiku that I read and photographs during the course of it. It was massive. Wow. But by the time it got on Radio 4, I was in hospital because I got diagnosed with horrible ulcerative colitis early in the year, and I ended up in hospital by the end of the project. So I had to kind of just put it down. I was just like, for a long period of time, because I just had got really ill. So I almost had to sort of not forget it, but it was like, this was this amazing thing I did. But other people hadn't forgotten it. And by the time we got to January and we went into lockdown, big lockdown again, like the second, it was the third lockdown, but for me, it was the second, because it was the second the kids were back at home again. So that for me was the significant thing. It was like, oh, I think I'm going to do this again. And Rich was like, why would you possibly do that to yourself again? I was like, because I haven't finished the story. Yeah, right. and it just, I felt like I wouldn't, if I needed to finish this, I needed to finish the story. And I also felt really low. It was January, it was winter, it was frozen, and other people out there felt like that. And it was like, how do I help these people get through this? We need to actively crawl our way out of this time. So I went into the woods again, into the dark with the haiku, and did another 9 films earlier this year. But because of that, I mean, I didn't get paid for doing it at all. The first time around, I managed to get a bit of additional funding, but the second time around, I did it just for not shits and giggles. I did it just for. Do you have to cut that? I didn't even ask if I could swear.
No, I think it's funny. Keep it in.
But it was just the commitment is insane. I can't believe I managed to pull it off. However, by the end of it, I put in an Arts Council funding bid to do a touring show, because I really wanted to tour, to make a show, to show some of the films, and to get audiences as I went round to write their own haiku and make additional pieces and poems out of what they made, so I could keep the social history moving and growing, and also to make an online archive so I can show all those slides and a lot of those haiku and a lot of the films, so that there is a place where that social history is preserved. And the Living Knowledge Network of the British Library and the National Rural Touring Forum and National Poetry Day are partnering me on it. And I've got the Arts Council funding to do it, and now I'm making a show and a new film, like a condensed film, and I might even have a documentary film crew following me around to make it. And so I invested in it then, and now I've got the kind of funding to actually
that is fantastic, do
something with it. So that's amazing. What I did in lockdown.
I mean, I watched those every day, and I found some of them just so poignant. The photographs combined with just these little words, just very, very short words, but they said so much in just 3 lines combined with that image. And it was just like, one of the values to me of folk songs are that they are a snapshot of history.
Yeah.
The Blackleg Miner tells a story, and we might not have that story now, but we know our history through moments like that. Yeah. And I think those films, I mean, I'm so glad that they're going to find a place to go online and stay online, because, in 100 years' time, children are going to be taught about this COVID pandemic in history lessons. Mm-hmm. We're living through history as we speak. And I think, those Haiflu films are part of that living history, and it's brilliant. I'm so glad, and I'm so glad you did it. It was inspired. It was absolutely inspired.
I'm so glad I did it, and it really helped me. It helped a lot of people. I got hundreds of people sending me case studies and feedback on how it just helped them, because rather than going for a walk every day and just sort of getting sad, they'd go for a walk and look for the opportunity to take a picture. They would look for ways of talking, and they get excited if they got in a film, or it just gave people a bit of creative focus each week. I think on that grounds it was worth it. But
can people see them now? Is there a place where they can go?
You can go on my website on livetalk.co.uk, and they're all there on a Haiflu page. But I'm actually getting a whole new Live Talk website made with a big Haiflu project on, so I've just have to remake and polish all the slides involved in order for them to go on the new website, and there was 600 slides. Wow. And it took me, and I crashed my computer doing it, and I had to go to the shop. It took me like 2 weeks, 600 slides. I was just going mental, but like putting logos on them all and stuff. But so I've got 600 slides and 23 films, and they're all going to go on there. And Rich made like 5 pieces of music as well for it. And the music's really important because it helps you process it as you listen. And it's just been beautiful project, and it financially saved us through lockdown, as well as just emotionally saved. It was all wins. It was, apart from the fact that, I got really ill, and apart from that bit, the hospitalisation. I don't blame the Haiflu Project entirely for that, though. That it wasn't the Haiflu Project's fault. It didn't happen the second time. It was a big thing. Sometimes when I get artistically inspired to do something, I push my body, well, perhaps harder than it likes.
Well, if everyone listening, go to Liv's website and watch and see these films, because
and if you see the Haiflu
remarkable.
show coming to your area, come and watch it. Like, I'm also doing an online version of the show on the 7th of June for an arts festival. I'll put that up there too. So
send me the links, and I will put. If you give me the links, I'll put them in the show notes for the episode.
Oh, I will. I'll do that. I'll do that. So please
people can see.
Come and see that it's a little arts festival. And they're like, oh, we haven't got anyone coming. And I was like, we haven't advertised it yet. I haven't advertised it yet. But that will be like with the questions and answers, but you'll get to see some of the films, and I'm going to do some of the poems that I wrote during that time as well.
That'll be brilliant. That will be fantastic. All right. So last thing, I've kept you a long time. Thank you for staying and talking to me. You've gone on to banana poetry now. Which might sound strange.
The banana poetry is a sideline. It's always been there. In fact, it's been there longer than the haiku.
Oh, okay.
So it's a similar example in a way, but in a slightly more tongue-in-cheek, less sort of emotionally charged way than the haiku. The banana poetry. Then there's a book called Banana Poems now that I've made. Every morning I write a poem on my kids' bananas before they go to school, because they have for their snack. So it started about 3 years ago, and you have to write on a banana like their name, and writing on a banana is lovely with a biro. If you haven't tried it, do it now.
Feels nice.
Feels nice. It's really good. Like, it's a good. So I just thought, well, I might as well write a poem because I've got to write their name. So I just wrote some little funny poems in the morning. So the kids would take them in, and the teachers would like cottoned onto this and started reading them out in class. And then it became like this. It sort of snowballed as these things do. And so the kids would go home and say to their parents, yay, I want a poem. So their parents would start writing poems or jokes on their bananas. And it just was lovely. It just kind of erupted into this wonderful kind of thing at my kids' school, the banana poems. So then I felt like, a rod from my own back here. I have to keep writing these banana poems every morning. As I said, sometimes I do follow an idea right through to the insane end. So I have been writing poems on their bananas ever since. So, and I share them on social media as well, and people like them, and it's quite nice. So quite a few people have said, you should put them in a book. So over Christmas, I thought, I know, I've got 2 weeks holiday. I could just do a quick banana poem book on the side, as you do. So I made a little book called Banana Poems, but it's open source, and the idea of it is that anyone can use any of the poems in it as long as they write them on bananas. And I'm really encouraging people. And it also talks about how you can write your own banana poems as well. But the whole principle is write poems on bananas, send them into school with your kids or wherever, in work with your grown-ups. And it's just this lovely way of being fun and creative and making food healthy. And then I got these books, which are like little A6 books, which look quite sweet. And they've got 125 poems in them, and they're lovely. I really enjoy them. They're really silly, but very. And it's got pictures of some of the bananas that I've written on.
Right.
And then I sent some copies to the school. The teachers were like crying in lockdown. People really like it. And I haven't been live yet, so I haven't been able to sell it sort of at gigs, but I've probably sold 100 copies of it or something. And it's a lovely thing. But what's really nice is that I've been following the joy revolution, I call it, as it goes around. So last week somebody told me that they had it at their nursery in somewhere up north. Or in the Midlands. I can't even remember what it was. I want to say Solihull. It might be Solihull. Yeah. And they were reading it out to like 50 3-year-olds, and all the 3-year-olds were writing poems on bananas and getting really into it. And they had banana poetry day. And
see these little things you kick off, and
these
they go
little
on their own little lives,
exactly. Just a little seed, creativity, and you don't be selfish about it.
Yeah.
You just you give it out there, and you just give people permission to be creative and to have fun, and it's taken off. It's been used in schools as well, like so older kids writing stuff on bananas and things, so that's something just purely for fun, for no profit desire at all, or no kind of that I was doing that. That's something that I've really, it's a nice little thing, the banana poems. It's very accessible.
What a thing, where next?
Okay, well, next is the Haiflu show.
Right.
Well, these are the things that are happening next for me. So I've got this show that I'm making that I'm touring, and I've got 8 gigs all booked already for sort of September, October, November, and the online thing. But I've also got some really big commissions. I'm working with Poet in the City this year in the British Library on a response to an exhibition called Unfinished Business, which is about feminism. And I'm looking at how women have been affected by lockdown specifically, and how it's really set the feminism back. So I'm going to be working with groups of women, and I'm going to be writing poems and making films in connection to this exhibition at the British Library in London. And so I'm going to be doing that in Exeter, and also take that further, working with Lincolnshire University, hopefully, if they get the funding, which I think they will, further looking at creatively showcasing that they're doing policy on, again, women, how they've been affected by lockdown, looking at how they can lobby the government on making sure things are different if something like this ever happens again. And I have been involved as their creative practitioner to creatively communicate that kind of stuff that they're doing. So that's really exciting. I'm also involved in a project called Hot Poets, which is about putting poets in different climate change organisations in line with COP26, like the Met Office, London School of Economics, the RSPB, things like that, to write scientifically and accurately, but creatively, about the real things that are happening, ground zero of climate change, to communicate, to go out at the same time as COP26. And that is funding dependent as well, but that'll be massive if it happens. WOMAD's happening this year. I run a stage there. I'm trying to organise that at the moment as well. And I've got a new book being published this year as well, called Soggy. Just a few things.
Yeah. So it's quite a bit of a quiet outlook for the life. Not much going on at all. you are quite remarkable. I've loved watching and being with you on your journey, and
thank you.
And it's just going forward, and you're an inspiration. So thank you.
I love what I do. I was able to give up my part-time job this year and do this full time, at least, for a year. I feel confident I can afford to do it for a year. It just has made me happier than anything, because this is what I've always wanted. But it took me 20 years from finishing my degree to being able to do this as a living. So I kind of paid my dues. And
20-year overnight success. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. It's not been a quick thing, but the journey has been incredible, and I really have so much to thank OBOD for that. So it's been wonderful.
I will, if you send me through those links, I will put those in the show notes.
I will. I'll
people can find where Live Talk is, which is livetalk.co.uk.
That's right.
I guess there are hubs to your social media from your website.
Yeah, and find me on Facebook just by writing Live Talk, and and Twitter. And Instagram. I don't use that very much, but yes, I'm fairly easy to find. But check out some of the Haiflu stuff, and if you want to come to this show online, I would love to have some support and people there. It's kind of a trial show, so it's always good to get feedback.
Lovely. Okay.
Thanks.
Your emergency poem, is that on your website still, your video?
The Human Emergency, it is on my website. Yeah.
Would you mind if I go on?
But I can post you the YouTube links to that as well.
And can I take the audio and put that on the show after your interview so people can hear that as well? Is that possible?
Absolutely. I mean, I can perform it for you if you like.
Oh, what, to finish off?
To finish off, yeah.
Yes.
I was gonna offer something else, but I can. This is the Human Emergency. It's getting late, almost 8:30 on a Tuesday, and my nose is in my daughter's hair again. A forest of sweet jasmine creepers, my tears salty rain dripping from her bright green leaves. "Why are you crying, Mummy?" she says, flinging her spaghetti arms around my neck, squeezing. I can't breathe. "I've just read something sad on the news," I say, prise her sticky fingers from my face, shake her off, look away from the blue-grey trust in her eyes, now reflected in the tiny screen in my hand where I can still see David Attenborough's furrowed brow. Oil fields, coal mines, gas lines, burping clouds of unrelenting stupidity into the earth's storm-sodden hanky, leaving tar-stained blood in the creases between blue sky and infinite space, in this place where oceans press plastic kisses to the shore. I try to smile, try to say, "Nothing for you to worry about, my love." But the lie is so big it fattens my tongue, so I bury my face in her warm skin and breathe her life back into my body, into my bones, into my mother and her mother before, teachers, tailors, scullery maids, back until she's just a link in the chain. Not the end of the line, not the last of our kind, not her. And then back even further to the beginning of everything, when we crawled out of the oceans and onto the shore, sitting together under the moon with the mother of us all. And I know soon she'll discover the world we have left her, They'll teach her in school the pilloried oceans, slush puppy icebergs, species extinction, sun boiling bats. She'll see that big graph and the prognosis, and that will be that. Run home through the May blossom sun on her face to ask me the truth about our flatlining race. But I'm not a scientist. I'm just a mum, and I'm more scared of that moment than any other to come, because the truth in the hands of despair is as good as a gun. And how can I give her the world just to take it away? You see, I was 5 years old once, clutching my Christingle orange with the jelly tots on cocktail sticks, and I slid open the bathroom door to see my dad at the sink. And picking at the wood chip on the wall, I said, "Dad, is there a God?" He stops brushing his teeth. Fog on his glasses, disguising his face, the weight of my question, the smell of citrus hanging in the steam between me and his answer. 1 second, nothing. 2 seconds, he briefly considers. But he is a man of truth and of science. He rests his mug of tea on a brief history of time and watches Discovery until 9:30 every night, and he is always, always, always right. 3 seconds. He lifts his toothbrush to his lips, scratches his head. "No," he says softly. And with that tiny word, God is dead. I take my no into the hall, into my life. I carry it still to this day. I have it right now, but it's never served me that well, or him for that matter, 30 years all alone in the home we all left and never returned to. My mum, my brother and me, even the cat, never came back. He just sits every night on his own with his no and his science. And I know if I were to ring him right now and say, Dad, is the human race over? Is there still any hope? He would lift his pipe to his toothless gums and say, nope, and continue to smoke. And that might be the truth, but it's not a good answer, because God may not exist, but I know there is something powerful, magic that weaves all our lives, that pokes us and loves us and wants us to evolve and survive. So when she asked me that question about the future of life on this earth, Dad, I've weighed up your truth and I don't query the facts, but I question their worth. Isn't it better to say, it's incredibly scary, it's as bad as they say, but you are alive and you are a miracle, and that has to mean something. And it's true, we might be standing at the moment where everything ends, but your generation has the power to save the whole world. And I'm going to help you because I've got your back and I am a miracle too. And guess what? There is something out there more courageous and potent than science, and I believe it will help us because I've touched it and I've felt it and I've seen it in you.
Damn, you got me again.
Oh.
Seriously, I don't think there can be anyone listening to that and not just go, just where it just gets you right in the heart, you know. It's just fantastic. Wow. Well, on that note.
Sorry, and Live Talk breaks another person.
Yeah, but you know, it's what we said all along and what I've said all throughout this interview. It's the truth that you just don't shy away from in your words, Liv, and long may that continue, because people need to say it, and people need to hear it. So, you know, hats off to you and everything you do. And thank you for being on DruidCast. I've kept you long enough.
It's been a pleasure.
What an amazing person Liv is. It just astounds me how she finds the time and energy to do all of the things she does. And that last poem, man, it's incredible. Do go onto her website too and see those Haiflu films. They are an amazing snapshot of our current social history. Hopefully the weather in the UK will notice that it's spring, nearing summer, and will get its act together so I can travel out for next month. But this music means we are approaching the end of this month's show. But before I go, let's have the results of last month's competition. The prize was a 10th anniversary edition of The Tarot of the Trees by Dana O'Driscoll, along with the illustrated book that accompanies the set. And the question I asked was, In the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot system, which suit represents water? Well, the answer is, of course, cups, and the first name drawn from the hat, and the winner of that wonderful set is Carl Johnson from Stafford, UK. Congratulations, Carl. That set will be with you very soon. The prize this month is a signed copy of Liv Talk's Banana Poetry book, and the question I'd like you to answer is, what is the name of the Japanese poetry style Liv used for her Haiflu project? What is the name of the Japanese poetry style Liv Talk used for her Haiflu project? Email your answer along with your full name and address to podcast@druidry.org, and one of you will win that fabulous book. Some of you are still sending your answers to druidcast@gmail.com. Don't do that anymore, because I'm beginning to not look at that. Use the new address, or newish address, podcast@druidry.org. Well, the rain is falling, the wind is blowing, but the white flower of the hawthorn is beginning to cover the hedgerows. So even though the weather might not have noticed, Beltane is finally here. Wherever you are, thank you for downloading the show, and I will see you again next month for DruidCast episode 171. But until then, I wish you all peace and blessed be. Goodbye.